Welcome back to Make It Mondays, and this week I'm going to be working on a new critter, and it's this little guy. So it's meant to be a chubby little dragon who's sitting on his back legs, so sitting up rather than laying down like my previous dragon. So wings, little wings for on his head for ears, and then 4 little paws and a belly. But the one that you're going to see is not in this color combo. It's actually going to be this nice, pretty dark rose, and then a lighter rose for where the pink was on the first one. So let me get everything turned around and set up, and I'll show you how it all gets started. So the dragon is just a newer version of the Worry Friend. So a lot of this is going to look very similar to the Worry Friend videos. So I'm starting with a magic loop. And unlike a normal crochet magic loop, I am not finishing off the stitches. But I'm getting to my correct number. Slip it off the back of the hook because I can. You can slip it off the front. You can also do this with a knitting needle rather than crochet hook if that is easier for you. And tightening it all up. And then working in the round. I start with 2 needles. It's easier for me, or 3 needles technically, but 2 holding stitches at a time. But that's easier for me for the really small first round, and then doing knit 1, make 1. I do my make ones as a lifted left increase. And this is where I add the last stitch or last needle. And it's basically this process for all 4 of the paws and for the tail. It's just the tail starts with a different number of stitches and is only increasing on the sides rather than increasing all the way around. And increases to a much larger size. So I'm going to get all of these going. So again, that's the start for all 4 paws. And it's a variation of what's going on here. This is 4 stitches starting, but other than that, it's basically the same idea. So I'm going to get all that done, and I'll be back when it's time to start on the body. So I've done the bottom of the dragon, and that is a provisional cast on the bottom. I do a crochet provisional cast on. I know there are other methods. This is the one I prefer since I can get it nice and tight when I am going to finish it off for real. But I'm going to hold the dragon tail in the front. Well, I will in just a second. But I'm going to work across to where that tail is going to be. Then hold the dragon tail in the front. Get all the needles all lined up and happy. It is super fiddly for this first bit. And 1 stitch from the front, 1 stitch from the back, knit across. And this connects the 2 knit items and is what allows this to effectively be a seamless knit. It does mean that when the knitting is done, there's nothing else to sew onto it. So a lot of amigurumi and other knit critters do have their appendages sewn on after the main body is done, or even have the body sewn to the head. All of my stuff is done like this, where I'm knitting 2 together. So when the knitting is done, everything's on. So that's the first part. Then we're going to grab one of the little legs. This is exactly the same as any of my other worry friends or the Santa friend. It's just that the shapes are a little different in order to make a dragon. So this is going to work up the exact same for a little bit. I am going to make and connect the wings off camera. I will show how the basics are done on the wings when I do little wings on his head. So I'll be back for the belly a bit later. And hopefully more of these ends will be woven in by then, so it's a bit easier to see what's going on. So here I have the tummy and the body with all 4 limbs attached. The first thing I'm going to do when I'm attaching the tummy, let me get this so it refocuses, is actually insert the yarn through the last stitch, take it off the needle. So I will be making one more knit round or knit row, but I'll be doing it through the by sewing the row to the body. So I did forget that I need to do one thing before I do that. I am going to leave that stitch off the needle. But I'm going to do picking up the bar behind the stitch. And then picking up the stitch. And this just secures it a little bit more onto the work. Then I'm effectively duplicate stitching this stitch right here. So I'm following the exact same path that stitch follows. Then inserting back into the stitch where I started. At the start of all of this, it's kind of awkward because the yarn is so long. And in my case, I'm going the wrong direction. It's easier for me to go right to left than left to right. I'm not going to bother going down underneath for the next couple stitches. Like I will go back down. Okay, just going to flip this so it's a little bit easier and I can working down rather than working across. So in through the top, or down through the top of the stitch, up through the bottom of the stitch. But then I need to double up the stitch I just did because there is a decrease in the body. So the main goal here is to not have any stitches twist, nor have the row that I'm sewing this to change. But I'm going to do this all the way across, and then I'm going to do all the way across the bottom, and then I'm going to sew down the sides. And sewing down the sides, I'm going to do running stitch. So in, out, all the way up. Up on that side, down on this side. And then at that point, I'll turn the whole thing inside out and sew in all sorts of ends from the stomach, from where my finger is currently going in, which is his bottom, all the way, or so all the ends that are currently attached to him will get woven in before I get back. And I will get most of the way to the to the nose muzzle area before I come back. So be back in a bit. So at this point, I have added the head, which you can see on multiple other videos. And I have worked the first increase round. I'm on the second increase round. So I've gone all the way up through the first 3 stitches of section 3. Now I'm going to turn the whole thing around. And I'm actually going to slip 3 stitches onto the needle before it, because this needle, where his face is going to be used more like a stitch holder for a while. So I'm going to slip the first stitch. I'm going to purl all the way to the back of his head. And then as I'm purling up the other side of his head, so his right side, I'm going to be doing the increases that I did on the left side of his head. So 1, 2, 3, 4, going to the stitch below and purling into that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, stitch below can either be from that, picking up from the back side or picking up from the front side, as long as it's the right loop. Purling, and then reversing that, so picking up the stitch first. 2, 3. That way there are 4 stitches left to build the muzzle, and I have the correct number of stitches between these 2 needles. Then working back towards the back, no increases. And I'm going to do that one more time where I'm doing an increase going out on both sides, and then it's going to be time to pick up all the stitches for the muzzle. So be back in just a second. Okay, so here is my little dragon head before I start adding the nose portion of him. So I'm going to be picking up stitches along this edge, working across those, and then picking up stitches along that edge, then working back and forth, just like doing the gusset of a sock. So I'm going to insert into this first slip stitch, pick up 1 stitch, go down to the next, pick up a stitch there. Then I'm going to do what I learned as a reverse E. It's also, some people consider it a half hitch if you know stuff out. You learned it from outside of Fiber Arts. Then picking up 1 more stitch. So I have 4 stitches on the needle. I'm going to work across these bottom 4. And starting with this stitch right here, picking up 1, reverse E, picking up 1, and last stitch. Now I'm going to work back. So, as said, this is kind of like the gusset of a sock. The only difference is on a sock you typically are also knitting the instep. And by the way, if you'd ever like me to actually make a pair of socks on here, or more traditional stocking, please let me know in the comment section below. I can do them. I just typically don't do them on camera because most people don't find them interesting. So I've done that little bit. So we are right around here on this little guy. we're going to start making the decreases to get rid of these extra stitches. So slipping the first stitch, 1, 2, then knitting those two together, making sure that the one from the bottom of the muzzle is the one going on top. 1, 2, again, the one on the bottom of the muzzle is going to be the stitch going on top. And then purling back. So these little guys did come about because I do have another dragon, another baby dragon, but that baby dragon is laying down. And a lot of times when you see a cartoon dragon, they're not laying down, they're sitting up on their hind legs. So then I want to see if I could make that shape work. Okay, so slipping one, knitting one, and across, or knitting those two together, and again knitting those two together on that side. And I've got one or two more times to do that. Actually, yeah, I've got two more. And each time it is getting smaller, but as far as the number of stitches across, but the entire muzzle is getting longer. Okay. And actually, I think that's actually it there. So this is the last time to purl across. So picking up 2 stitches in the first 2 slip stitches again, and reverse E for 1 and pick up the last stitch. Knitting all the way across again. And this time around, I'm not going to decrease any. Up 1, reverse E, and pick up 2. Okay. So now I've added a whole bunch of stitches again. So I'm going to purl across so that the center 6 stitches, so everything but what I've added are on the needles. But I am going to purl the last 2 together, or the stitch I'm keeping, the first stitch of the increases together, keeping the center stitch on the outside, so on the top, and then I'm going to flip the whole thing. Knit across to it, so doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same thing, putting the center stitch on the top. And we're going to repeat that again. And all the way up until I've reached the end of all of the added stitches. And I am slipping the first stitch partially to give it a prettier finish on the top, because this is one of the top lines of his nose. So the colors for this one were actually picked by the person who's going to be receiving it. So this is not a color combo that I'm planning on having in the store when it is eventually time for these to enter the store, probably sometime over summer. And this is summer 2025 in case you are watching this video way in the future. Once they do become available, I will be adding a link to the description. No matter what, the link to the store will be in the description down below, and then to the actual product as soon as the product is available. But that also means that between now and summer, or whenever you are watching this, if you want to let me know what kind of colors you'd like to see in a dragon, specifically one of these little sitting up dragons, you can let me know. And I can see if I can make it happen for you. Okay, so that's the last stitch on that side. And now it's time to work all the way around. So I'm trying to make sure that that first stitch doesn't twist too bad. And I'm actually going to do something a little different so that there's less of a hole. So I knit into the stitch, and actually I'm going to go all the way around that stitch so there's less of a hole. Nope, that made it worse. Okay, I will fix the hole on the next round. There are ways to do it, and I just forgot how I did it on the previous one. But I'm going to work all the way up, including giving some eyes and these little head ornamentations, which I will show how to do next, and be back in a minute. So I said I would get back to how the wings and these little head ornamentations work a bit later. So the wings are the exact same process, it's just got an added piece to what I'm going to show you. It's also a slightly different scale. So I've cast it on. I'm going to knit the first stitch because with my cast on you always have to knit the first stitch. Work all the way across. And then on the way back, it's not going to quite be that easy. So slip the first stitch, knit one, knit two together, purl one, then knit two together, knit one, and knit the last stitch. Then knit all the way across. But you can already see that's making a ridge in the middle over the garter stitch. So that's what's going to make the ridges in the wings and the head ornamentation. And then the decreases are what gives it its shape. So I do one knitwise and then I do one purlwise. So literally any stitch that's a knit, making it a purl, and vice versa when I make the other one. And that's the basics of how little wings are done. Every other row, decrease one stitch per section. Then on this last one is when things get a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to knit these two together, pull the first stitch across, knit these two together, purl that, and pull that stitch across. And that makes a little ornamentation, and it puts the yarn on the correct side to be woven into his head. So I will be back in just a little bit. Here is the final little dragon. As you can see, this one is a little bit different than the prototype. I'm still figuring out which version of the muzzle I like better. In a lot of ways, I like the purple one better, but it didn't quite work with this color. So let me know which one you prefer, and either way I will be prototyping out a little bit more before these end up on the Etsy store. And if you made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you next time on Make It Mondays. Bye.